I take it you think my message is disingenuous?
Conspiracy sells. It pays for bulletproof limousines.
You think I do it for the ratings?
I think you're the O'Reilly factor with a shop-worn little gimmick.
What Bill O'Reilly knows about the truth could fill an eyedropper.
The Kelly Cahill incident.
Kelly Cahill and her husband were driving home in Victoria, Australia, when a craft appeared overhead. The Cahills lost an hour of time, and Kelly was hospitalized with severe stomach pain after discovering a triangle-shaped mark near her navel. As I said, my interest is real. What I need is your expertise.
Our expertise for what?
I'm rattling some pretty big cages in the intelligence community, but I'm prepared to go all in. Prepared to blow open maybe the most evil conspiracy the world has ever known.
That's quite an assertion, Mr. O'Malley. What's stopping you?
If I'm putting my ass out there, I need to know it's hanging by more than just a very slender thread.
Apparently he has something to show us.
Something. And someone.
Ah, yes. Do you remember when the left was the one that believed in all the conspiracy theories? They used to ask so many questions. Trust no one. Remember that? Now it's replaced with trust Fauci. So before I get started, I want to mention I'm on BitChute and YouTube, and as yesterday's video did quite well on YouTube, it was frustrating to see much of the engagement. Many of the comments were not published by YouTube. They take my comments on my videos, they take them down. What's interesting is I get alerts that they're there, and yet they never show up. In fact, I myself tried to paste or post 2 comments and pin one to the top to explain to people what was going on, and YouTube removes my comments. They remove my comments off of my own videos. So putting that out there, if you said something, I never curate comments because it's engagement. I don't take down engagement no matter how wacky it is, whatever people say. And it's a frustrating thing. Yes, I'm shadow banned. I've gone from 5,500 views a month, and I was getting a new subscriber every other day. And then the event in early January of 21 occurred, and it was like immediately view counts dropped to about 1,000 per month, and basically no subscriber growth at all. And keep in mind, these metrics I had for like 2 years ahead of time, so it was pretty prominent. They can make you disappear, which is why new tech is growing. But speaking of new tech, I want to go back to some very old tech. I want to talk some OG conspiracy theory stuff, because it's something I'm seeing a lot now. You've probably seen these UFO stories. The government, the military, they're going to come out. They're going to tell us that they've known about aliens all along, and they're secretly in charge of everything. And I think this is just all a distraction, and you should ignore it. Now, some of you obviously have a lot more when I make videos. Some of you lived through some of these times that I just have to go back and research. And you have very interesting stories and a much more intimate knowledge of the events than I do, just from reading about them. But this is one that I am actually familiar with through experience. This would be the time frame around the late 90s, early 2000s, and all the chat rooms and stuff like that. And like now, there was people that talked about subjects that the government didn't want to get out there. And some, obviously some people are better than others, and people began to gather quite a following. I think bigger back then, you probably would have seen things like on the JFK assassination. That was a big conspiracy group that people were always looking into, and moon landing and stuff like that. This was before melting office furniture toppled Building 7, collapsing it into its own footprint, and not so much as putting a scratch on buildings 6 feet away. But people were getting information out there, people were building followings, and so, like now, you can see they tried to discredit them. The protest on the 6th looks like the FBI had infiltrated these groups and instigated a lot of what you saw that was negative. You can see they're infiltrating Bible studies. Like, I don't even know what they're protecting us from out there in the wide world. They seem quite focused on controlling and containing the American citizen. But anyway, within these messaging boards and chat room groups, if a guy was getting too good, if he was reaching too many people, like in the YouTube online world, 1 million subscribers seems to be the trigger point. They would use this strategy called deadcatting. So the FBI would get into a chat group and they would say something about, do you know about the aliens? The new story, the aliens in, Nevada. And what would happen is they could split that chat room, because you get a certain number of people that are interested in conspiracies just because it's sensational and dramatic and interesting and exciting, and they believe everything that comes down. And then there's these people that are doing legitimate work, exposing things that Americans really deserve to know about. And so by throwing aliens out there, by throwing UFOs out there, you could take what was an effective communication from somebody that was informed and sharing information, answering questions and providing resources, to completely breaking down the group as they then begin arguing about something, completely irrelevant, a complete distraction. And this is called deadcatting, or the deadcat strategy. It's the introduction of a dramatic, shocking, or sensationalist topic to divert discourse away from a more damaging topic. So a political strategist, Linton Crosby, described this technique saying, "There is one thing that is absolutely certain about throwing a dead cat on the dining room table. And I don't mean that people will be outraged, alarmed, and disgusted. That is true, but irrelevant. The key point is that everyone will shout, 'Geez, mate, there's a dead cat on the table.' In other words, they will be talking about the dead cat, the thing you want them to talk about, and they will not be talking about the issue that had been causing you so much grief ahead of time." So this is a way to control the news cycle. They dangle this stuff out there, and it's the shiniest thing. Look, over here, aliens. And people are like, oh, okay. What were we talking about? The girl that drops dead 2 weeks after her second shot? No, aliens. And so just don't fall for that. Don't take the bait. Call it out. That's deadcatting, and stay focused on what you're talking about. The other thing in news cycles I would like to point out is I think large public group demonstrations don't bother with it. Because if you don't have a sympathetic media, like, did you see the tens of thousands of people that protested in favor of Brexit? You probably didn't. Have you been reading about the mass protests in communist Cuba right now? Probably not. The news media is open and overtly Marxist, and just like my view count, they can make these stories disappear no matter how many people are out there protesting. And then, in fact, you get infiltrators, you get agitators, and you just get the occasional crazy person. All it takes is one to do something bad, and they will smear your entire group for years. So it's just not a safe way to advance your political agenda. I just don't think for the right, large group action is that effective or that safe. Now, what does work? Well, look at what scares them. Look at what has them freaking out. Local office. You're seeing the letter between P and R. These people are beginning to get into local offices. Oh no. And that's what scares them. It's the local political action, taking charge of where you can, because the left's hold on things is very tenuous, but it's everywhere. It's like a cancer. It's spread to everything. Let me give you an example. I'm in Washington State. For many years, I worked in a union. I had no choice but to be in a union. So for a couple of years, I was like, all right, you know what? I'm going to start attending. I became a union steward. I said I'll start attending these meetings just to see what it's all about. And so they would have a monthly meeting. It was after work. It was in the center of town. You don't get paid. Almost nobody shows up. They rarely had a quorum. But what I learned was there was 4 guys, and they were there, rain or shine, no matter what, and they ran that hall. Now, that hall represented 1,000 workers or something, but 4 guys that just showed up, 4 leftist Marxist guys, dedicated their lives to controlling that hall. So what would happen is every so often we'd get political candidates looking for the union endorsement. And so I remember sitting there, and they'd come and they'd give their spiel, and then these 4 guys would say, okay, if you want to vote for whoever we're going to endorse, you have to go to our website, you have to register here, we'll email out a password, you can use that password, create an account, cast your vote, we'll put it up in like 10 days. It was a very convoluted process. And so I tried to do it. I couldn't even figure it out. And I was one of the handful of, right-leaning people that even bothered to show up to these meetings. The majority of the people that they were representing were right-leaning, working-class people. But what I realized is by controlling the hall, by always being there, by having control over the voting method, we were always endorsing the left-wing candidate. But it was only 4 people. But you couldn't get anybody interested in showing up every single month for no pay to push back on this leftist agenda. So you can see how a lot of this leftism just continues through apathy. Like, they're willing to work harder than you are. They're willing to work without pay. They're willing to put in the time and the effort and the energy. And this is how a very few people can actually co-opt and take over an institution like that. And they've just done it everywhere. But you'll find out the reason they're afraid of the school board thing is there's probably only 2 or 3 people on the school board that are openly Marxists that are dedicating their lives to this. So all you need is 3 or 4 patriots, and they can flip the entire balance, start representing the majority of people that aren't insane, and all of a sudden, voila, you begin to de-radicalize a lot of these institutions. So unfortunately, freedom isn't free, and we're reaping the fruit of our apathy. And so if you want to see things changed, you've got to get involved where you can, where you are, and don't fall for any deadcatting.